Welcome to the Inner Fuel podcast, where we dive deeper into entrepreneurship and mental health. Whether you're a founder, a high achiever, or someone looking for balance, this podcast is here to fuel your journey. Let's get started. So, in today's episode, I really want to talk about a topic that I'm fascinated about, which is imposter syndrome. And this is something that I've been thinking about quite lately, ever since I've started my solopreneurship journey. And I've thought to myself, okay, well, I've been working 7 to 8 years in corporate marketing. I've built a lot of experience. Now I'm almost 4 months into my solopreneurship journey, and I still feel like I don't exactly know what I'm doing, although I do, and the testimonials and reviews that I get from clients prove that I do and I'm doing good work. But sometimes I can't help but get the feeling of feeling like a fraud. Does that make any sense whatsoever to you?
So it's a common thing for anybody that wants to do something that they're putting themselves out there. When the spotlight's on you, you feel like everybody's going to know what a fraud I am. Everybody's going to see right through the fact that I don't know what I'm doing. And the fact that a lot of people feel like that makes it kind of normal, right? So it's not, if that actually gives me a feeling of hope that not everybody feels like this, so then it's not that big of a deal that I'm feeling like a fraud. But at the same time, there is a phenomenon that happens in our brain. And one thing that we all need to understand is that our brain lies to us. It lies to us a lot, especially when it's feeling anxious, especially when it's freaking out about uncertainty or doesn't really get that validation. And there is no sense of validation coming back at you. So you really don't know what you're doing. So then your brain freaks out and it's like, oh, you're no good. Everybody's going to know that you don't know what you're doing. You're going to get exposed as a fraud. So my solution for that is just to kind of let myself know that everybody feels like this. I remember hearing an Oprah interview. I don't know if you're familiar with Oprah, but she's really big in the United States. She used to do these interviews, and she said that regardless of who they were, whether it's Beyonce or President Barack Obama or whoever that would come to do an interview, they would always ask her and want that validation of, is that okay? Did I do okay? Because we want to be liked. We want to get that validation that what we're doing is okay, but we're not always going to get that. And that's where I've noticed, as somebody that specializes in anxiety based disorders, is that our over anxious brain, it wants guarantees. It wants to know that we hit it out of the park, that we did a great job. And the goal in life for all of us, whether we struggle with anxiety or not, whether we're entrepreneurs or not, is to be okay with uncertainty and just realize that we did the best we could and that it's okay, and that people are going to judge even if we're perfect, but that we have to be okay with, I might not be where I want to be, but I'm definitely not where I used to be. And that's having like little mantras that remind you that you're doing the right thing. You're only going to get better. You're only going to excel at whatever you're going for. I think that will create a sense of calm. Now, what helps you, Kareem, about when you're feeling like that? What helps you continue to move on and continue to do what you're doing?
I think what helps me is to know and let's say get proof and social proof that the work that I'm actually carrying out for people is good work and to continuously get those reminders from people that, okay, they've, let's say, assigned a certain task or a project to me, then I go off and I do the project and then I give it to them and they're happy with the outcome. So I feel like that constant reassurance is always a reminder that, okay, well, what I'm doing seems to be good and seems to be working and, effective. But I just don't like the fact that I have to rely a lot on, let's say, that social proof and, testimonials and reviews. I understand from the beginning, from, let's say, the early stages of my journey, that it's good to have that portfolio and to build that log of feedback and case studies. But at some point, I would like to not have to think about that, and that's sort of the bridge that I'm looking to get over, perhaps in my first year or my first year and a half.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're not always going to get that the social proof. You're not always going to get the testimonials. What do you do without it?
Hmm. What do I do without it? That's a very good question. So, what I resort to, and now I'm actually realizing that time management is super important, but I am very well aware that I need to continuously upskill and learn and actually block out time to train myself because, you know, it's interesting because I promised myself after my master's degree that I will never go back into education. That was it. I've done my bachelor's, I've done my master's, and then, all right, well, let's leave it at that. Then a few years later, I decided, okay, let me do my CIM, which is the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and then go on a journey of becoming a chartered marketer. So that was the next phase. I've completed that. I still have to do one more year of CPD, which I will get done, inshallah, by the end of 2026. Um, and so the constant pursuit of learning and to continuously keep yourself accountable, because with marketing, things change, especially with technology, especially with the rise of AI. Like there is a lot of people say that the work of whether it's marketers or designers or maybe developers, that their work might be compromised as a result of the growth of AI. And that got me thinking, well, okay, maybe my job, I don't think it will be replaced, but it could be affected. So what do I do? Well, I need to train, I need to learn, I need to develop my skills. Now, I do think that the more you develop your skills and the more you constantly and actively try to upskill yourself, the more you can tackle, let's say, that imposter syndrome. But I'm still yet to reach that point of, you know, confidence to the point where I'm no longer thinking of that and that no longer occupies my brain.
Well, for a lot of people, you really don't need to be the master at everything that you're doing. You can literally just be 10% better than the person that you're serving. And but a lot of us, because we have this, especially if we're an overachiever, if we're a driven individual, we want to be 110% better than anything that anybody else is doing. We're always functioning. Like I tell my patients all the time, I'm like, you're so driven, you're so successful that the bar is probably here. You're probably functioning at this level, but you still feel like you're not good enough because your standards are here. And so this is what we need to kind of tell ourselves, is that even though I'm functioning at this level and the bar is here, the expectation is here, I'm still above average. And to not beat yourself up because you're not at your unrealistic high standards. For people that are high achievers and driven, we're conscientious people, we want to give the best, but we also have really high standards for ourselves. We wouldn't be achieving at the level we're achieving if we didn't have such high standards. But that high standards that we have, it could be unattainable, it could be irrational, it could be something based on fear where nobody's expecting that, but yet in our minds we're like, unless we're at that level, then we're going to be identified as a fraud. When literally for most people, like especially in the field of coaching, if you want to coach somebody or help somebody, you just need to be 10% better and focused on continuing to grow, continuing to get better. But like I said, for a lot of us, where our brain lies to us, it tells us, well, you're not going to be any good unless you're 200%
Mm,
better than everybody. And I know a lot of women
yeah.
feel like this because for men, I used to work with this police officer and she wanted to apply to be at a higher position. And she's like, but I'm not as good. I'm not good enough yet to apply for that. Where men, they can be only 10% better and they will go for that job, where women feel like, unless I'm 110% better, I'm not even going to put
Mm.
myself out there.
That's super fascinating. And I wonder if there's also a correlation between, let's say, uh, career progress and job application. Like I know during my time in corporate, if I see a job description and let's say I can do two out of the five things that are listed, or let's say three or four out of the 10 things that are listed, I will go ahead and apply. And I will try to, let's say, wing it in the interview phase. And sometimes I actually ended up getting roles where I don't think I was fully qualified to do
Yeah.
so. And I remember being afraid and then getting that role and saying to myself, oh, am I biting more than I can chew? Do you think there's also, let's say, a correlation between male and female applicants when it comes to that side of things?
It's everything. It's totally the fact that a lot of women, like I said, will feel like the only way I'm going to apply for this is if I meet 10 out of 10 of the criteria. Where a man, like you just said, you might meet only four of them and you're like, I'm going to still go and do it because you have more confidence. And then women, just I don't know how it is globally, but at least in the United States, we are paid less than men, depending on the job, I guess. And so we feel like in order to earn our place in the business or in the corporations, we need to be better than the average applicant. And that is something that is not necessarily the truth. It's just something that we've somehow subconsciously inherited, that programming, that unless we are 110% qualified, we're not going to do it. And what I admire about the men is that they will still put themselves out there and they're not afraid to apply even if they meet 40% of the criteria. But women need to do the same thing, I feel like, and not believe the fears or the irrational lies that they're telling themselves about, well, you're not good enough, nobody's going to want you, you're going to embarrass yourself for putting yourself out there. The way to get confident is to not listen to those things and do it anyway, because courage is taking action or taking risk despite having the fear, despite having the doubts. And that's the only way we're going to progress in our lives, as we take that risk anyway without being held back by the lies and the mindset that we have.
That's so interesting because the whole let's say the stories that we create in our minds tend to be stories that we end up believing, and we give it so much meaning and we spend so much time delving on those stories. Now, suppose from, let's say, an entrepreneurial point of view and somebody that wants to start off, do they need to reach a point where they are fully confident about starting that entrepreneurial journey to jump into launching their own business or their own side hustle? Or if you can just elaborate a little bit more about, even if they feel they might not be able to do it, they should still take that risk and go ahead with it anyway.
Well, I'm a big believer in failing forward. So I mean, you're never going to know how you need to change your approach, what you need to learn, in what direction you need to pivot unless you take that action. You're never going to be 100% ready. I remember hearing that even when I became a mom. Like, I wanted to know everything about parenthood before I had a child. And everybody's like, you're never going to be ready that way. You're never going to know everything you need to know until you have the child. I don't see it being any different than anything else I'm doing. If I'm starting a business, I'm not going to know what I don't know unless I actually start and fail forward. I love the concept of failing forward. You're constantly growing. I love the concept of allowing failure to be your best teacher, because if you're afraid to fail, you're never going to take risks. But if you see failure as a teacher and that it helps you grow and it helps you understand yourself better and it helps you identify your weaknesses, it helps you identify the direction you need to go to get better, then you're never going to go anywhere, because you're so stuck in your mind as far as like, I have to have everything in place before I take action, that you're almost paralyzed. What do they say? Paralysis through analysis,
This is
where you're not
yeah.
moving at all. You're spinning your legs, you're spinning your wheels and not really going anywhere. So take the
Mm.
chance, fail forward. It's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes, but obviously make calculated risks. I'm not saying to just take your entire bank account and gamble it away on something that you have no preparation for. But if you have some preparation, you have the funds, or you have an idea of what you want to do, take small risks in the direction of the dream that you're trying to achieve.
Mm. I do love that concept of failing forward, and I do think that there's a lot of stigma behind the word fail. Failing is not a bad thing. It's, you learn from it. Like, I know for myself, starting off on LinkedIn and trying to build that personal brand, I remember being so cringed by the posts that I create, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not used to this. I'm not used to putting myself out there that much. I'm sharing pieces about my life and all that stuff. But then, honestly, after about 1 month, it took me, yeah, 3 weeks to a month. Now I'm so used to it, and I post content. I don't even, I don't look at the likes or the engagements. Okay, it's good when people like your stuff because on LinkedIn, that's how the algorithm works, I suppose. More people get exposed to your work. But this concept of if a post is awful and if it doesn't resonate with anybody, okay, cool. I'm not gonna go off and delete that post. No, I'll leave it because it's a part of learning, it's a part of growing. And plus, I genuinely, I'm not afraid of looking a certain type of way anymore. And I do think that that's going to become easier and easier as my journey continues. And then I suppose in terms of, something that you mentioned earlier that I find really interesting is that the 10% increase, you're getting better at a 10% incremental rate. Now, some people say 1%, and then by the end of the year, it's 30, 365% difference. But something that I find fascinating, the idea of tracking your progress. Like how do you really gauge whether or not you're making those incremental differences? Is there something like a methodology that you should have in place, or is it something that you're aware of? Like for example, that example that I gave about me not getting bogged down too much about my LinkedIn posts, surely that's an improvement, and that's maybe a 25% increase in the better, but it's hard to quantify that. It's hard to sort of linearly judge that.
It's true. And like you said about your LinkedIn posts, I remember like in 2020, somebody said I should go live on Facebook. And the idea of going live on Facebook terrified me. I was like, there is no way you would ever see me go live. And then I said, well, it took a while for that to settle in for me. I was like, there's no way I'm going to do this. This is too mortifying. It's too embarrassing. And I remember creating a fake Facebook page and just going live and practicing on my phone. And after a while, I got a little bit more comfortable. And the same thing, like somebody else mentioned, that the first 50 videos you're going to make are going to be awful. And it's true. I have videos from my podcast, my very first episode versus my 60th episode. Very different. I kept failing forward. I made a lot of mistakes. I looked awful. The first couple of videos I made, I was just like frozen solid trying to talk into this camera. And so you get better by doing it. You get better by practicing, but accept the fact that you're not going to be good at first. Accept the fact that you're not going to hit it out of the park at first. It's like anybody. If you're going to be a baseball player, you're not going to just, the first day you decide you're going to be a baseball player, you're not going to be signed into a professional league or a football player or soccer player, whatever. You're not going to, you have to practice. You have to keep practicing so much that you start building your own confidence. And like you said, not really caring about the shots you don't make, not really caring
Mm.
about putting yourself out there on a post and not getting the reaction you want, or doing a podcast interview and making a fool of yourself and saying things that people make mistakes. It's okay. I remember I used to watch, because, I have a history of anxiety. It runs in my family. And this is why I specialize in anxiety based disorders, because anxiety continues to still affect me. And me putting myself out there, even doing something like this 5 years ago, 5 short years ago, would have been terrifying for me. But now I've done it so much that it's not that big of a deal. And so I used to watch people accepting awards. Like we
Mm.
have the Oscars or the Grammys or whatever, and they would go up there, and these are celebrities and they're getting an award. And I remember seeing Jennifer Lawrence, who's an actress, and she was accepting an award. And I saw her just turning red. Her whole, like she was wearing a strapless dress, and her whole neck and chest was getting red. But she continued to speak, and she acknowledged that she was nervous. And I was like, wow, she doesn't, like, I'm rooting for her. I see her getting nervous. I see that redness coming up, and I'm rooting for her. And I want her to win. And I know that for the majority of people watching you doing whatever you're doing, whether it's speaking on video or speaking on stage, they want you to win. And so you have to believe that, even though your brain is telling you everybody's laughing at you, everybody's making fun of you, don't believe those lies. Just believe that most people want you to win, just like you want somebody else to win on stage when they're struggling, or somebody else that's putting themselves out there, and they're doing their best initially, but you know that if they keep at it, they're going to only get better.
Yeah, that really resonates to me as well because I remember we used to have a module in college called Professional Oral Communication, and I recall the lecturer that gave those that module, he was quite intimidating, and like he'd get us up and then we'd have to prepare a certain topic and then we'd have to get up and speak about it. And the way that he would look at us, he's looking directly into our soul, and I'm like, I can't mess up in front of him. So he sort of set a good benchmark in the beginning, and that over time started to gradually made me get over my fear of public speaking. But then I do recall some times where I was forced to speak, out of nowhere, and I had nothing to prepare. I didn't know that I was going to speak or present. I didn't have anything in line, and then, well, I couldn't run away. You sort of had to do that, and I do think that it's those environments where you're compelled and you have practically no choice. But then again, you can put yourself in those situations. There are courses out there, for example, Toastmasters, and many different uh, public speaking courses that will give you that training that you need in order to get over that, let's say, imposter syndrome in the realm of presentations and public speaking. So I do find that super fascinating, and I do think that maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like maybe there's sort of like an underlying phobia when it comes to these things, and in order to get over a phobia, you have to expose yourself to that. And I feel like there's an underlying theme in what we've been saying for, let's say, the last 20 minutes.
Well, I don't think you're going to get over, like, I still get very nervous when I speak, but I also know that it only lasts a couple of seconds and I do it anyway. It's not the fear of public speaking, it's what we're telling ourselves. It's being too focused on what the audience is seeing in us. We're too focused on how they're judging us. We're making it about ourselves. One thing that I've learned is, yes, I'm still going to get nervous. It's just a physiological response that I have when I get that microphone in my hand or speak for whatever reason. I'm going to be nervous, but I've trained my brain to not focus about how I'm looking or how I'm coming across. I love this thing. I heard somebody mention this. It's like, when you're nervous, be of service. And so I try to focus on, okay, how am I going to serve the audience with my message? It's not that I'm going to get rid of my anxiety. I know a lot of really good public speakers that are making a ton of money as public speakers, but yet they still get nervous. It's not about that. It's not about getting rid of the nervousness or the anxiety. It's about reframing it in my mind. Now, instead of calling it nervousness, I say, I'm getting excited. I'm getting excited, and that makes me react physiologically, but I also know once I'm in the groove of it, I'm going to be okay. But I also try and focus on, what is my message? How am I helping people with what I'm saying, and not make it about myself, and focus on how I'm serving the audience, whether it's on video or whether it's doing a live presentation.
No, I do love how you flip that, and it's like a reframe and shift of mindset. And I'm also assuming as well that that can be applied to any endeavor. Let's say if you're starting off as an entrepreneur, as maybe a consultant or somebody in the service-based industry, perhaps focusing on how you can best serve your clients and how you can actually deliver value to them. That should be uh, occupying, let's say, the um, most of your mental thought process. How can I actually serve them? How can I add value? How can I upskill and learn and continuously get better in order to best serve and deliver value?
It's the same thing with selling, right? Nobody wants to be that sleazy salesperson selling your products. But when you look at selling as not, like, we're selling all the time. We're selling when our children are selling when they're trying to get an extra hour on their curfew, or we're constantly trying to get somebody to align with what we're trying to ask, right? It's not always about money. And so when we want to sell a program, like, I used to hate the whole concept of selling my courses, selling my services. But now, if somebody needs help and I can help them and I have a service that I can offer them to make them feel better, I'm going to talk about that. Money
Mm,
might be involved, but my goal is, I want to help you, and focusing on how they can benefit from something that I have to offer, as opposed to me just trying to trick people into buying products that they don't need. And so we have to reframe our thinking about what it means to sell, what it means to, because we're also, when we're doing a job interview, we're selling ourselves, right? When we're doing a job interview, we're trying to say, hey, hire me, I'm the best person for this job. So we have to change our thinking about what it means to sell.
Interesting. Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree with you. And I guess to conclude and wrap up our episode, if you could perhaps summarize, the let's say top three tips as to how somebody, whether they're starting off in entrepreneurship or even just from a broader perspective, how could they learn how to improve and get over that imposter syndrome?
Well, the first thing is you don't have to be 100% ready. Just do it anyway. Fail forward. You will never know what you need to do or how you need to change or pivot unless you put yourself out there. Because for some people, maybe you're going in a certain direction and you put yourself out there and you try it and you realize this isn't something that's my passion, but you're never going to know until you put yourself out there and you try. And then the other thing is, what did I mention? So you don't have to be ready. You can fail forward, be comfortable with the idea of failing, and then not feeling like this is about you. If you have a service, if you have a business, if you have an idea that you think can really benefit people, make it about your audience, make it about your target audience, about your avatar, about how are you wanting to serve these people? How are you wanting to change the world? How is your services and your idea going to make an impact? And I think as long as we focus on being of service, then it's not about us anymore. We're just one person trying to do something as far as make a change in the world. And I don't think that's a selfish thing. And I think it really helps us focus on, I am trying to help other people. It's not about me, it's about them.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Fascinating stuff as usual, and I learned so much from that, and I really appreciate your insights on it. And here's to failing forward more. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.